What if the person you trust the most is also the reason you were never supposed to come back? Kofi returned home expecting love, reunion, and peace, but instead, he walked straight into something buried far deeper than memory, truth, or even fear itself. A locked room. His own name written on the floor. And a sister who knows more than she is willing to admit. But here's the real question. If Amina was trying to protect him, then who or what was she protecting him from all along? And if everything was already set in motion the moment he stepped back into that house? Was his return really an accident, or was he always meant to come back? If this story kept you hooked till the end, don't forget to like, subscribe, and join for more chilling African folktales, because some truths don't just end with the story, they stay with you. I had imagined this moment so many times during the long years I spent abroad, that it almost felt unreal when I finally stepped off the bus and onto the dusty road leading back to my village. The air smelled the same, warm and earthy, carrying faint traces of wood smoke and distant cooking fires. For a brief moment, a quiet smile touched my face, because it felt like nothing had changed. I had come home. My name is Kofi, and this village was once everything to me. But more than anything, it was her. Amina. My younger sister, my only family, the one who filled silence with laughter and turned ordinary days into something warm and alive. In my mind, she was already waiting for me, standing at the doorway with that familiar smile, her eyes lighting up the moment she saw me again. I held on to that image as I began walking deeper into the village, but slowly, something began to feel different. People noticed me, I could tell, yet their reactions were strange. A few greeted me, but their smiles felt forced, too quick to disappear. Others looked at me, then quickly looked away, as if they had seen something they did not want to face. Baba Nuru, I called gently when I spotted the old man sitting outside his house. He had known me since I was a child. He looked up, surprised at first, then stood slowly, forcing a smile. Kofi, you have returned, he said, his voice tight. We spoke briefly. He asked about my journey, about life abroad, about things that felt far away now. I waited for him to ask about Amina, but he didn't. So I asked instead. How is Amina? The moment her name left my mouth, something changed. Baba Nuru's smile faded, just for a second, before he quickly looked away. He cleared his throat and let out a short, uncomfortable laugh. She is fine, he said quickly, then pointed toward the road. You should go home. She will be waiting. But his eyes didn't match his words. As I walked away, I felt it again. The whispers. The sudden silence whenever I turned back. People watching me, then pretending they weren't. Something was wrong. Not loud, not obvious, but heavy enough to settle inside my chest. The closer I got to my house, the quieter everything became. Even the sounds of daily life faded, as if the village itself was holding its breath. Then I saw it. My home. It stood exactly as I remembered, and yet it didn't feel the same. The door was closed. The windows were still. There was no movement, no sign of life, no sign of Amina. I stopped just a few steps away, my heart beating harder than it should. This was the moment I had dreamed about for years. The reunion. The feeling of being complete again. But as I stood there, staring at the door, a cold thought crept into my mind. Something felt wrong before I even stepped inside. I stood there for a few seconds, my hand hovering near the door, as if something inside me was asking me to wait. But I had not come all this way to stand outside. I pushed the door open slowly. It creaked, louder than I remembered. The first thing that struck me was the silence. Not the peaceful kind, but the kind that feels empty, like something has been taken away. The air inside felt heavy, almost stale, as if the house had forgotten how to breathe. Amina? I called softly. No answer. I stepped inside, my eyes moving across the room. Everything looked familiar, yet wrong in ways I couldn't immediately explain. Some things were missing. The old wooden chair near the window was gone. The woven mat she used to sit on wasn't there. Even the walls felt bare, stripped of the small touches that once made this place feel alive. Amina? I called again, louder this time. Then I heard it. A faint sound. Movement from the back of the house. My heart lifted slightly. She was here. Footsteps approached slowly, uneven, almost hesitant. And then she appeared. Amina. For a moment, I just stared at her, trying to match the person in front of me with the sister I had carried in my memory for years. She looked thinner. Her face seemed tired, her eyes dull, as if something inside her had faded. Amina, I whispered. I expected her to run toward me, to smile, to cry, to hold me the way she used to. But she didn't. She stopped a few steps away, her body stiff, her arms hanging by her sides. Her eyes met mine for only a second before shifting away. You're back, she said quietly. That was all. No warmth. No excitement. No emotion. I forced a small smile, trying to ignore the strange tightness building in my chest. Yes. I'm back. I thought you would be happy to see me. She nodded slowly, but her face didn't change. I am. But she didn't look like she was. An awkward silence fell between us. It stretched longer than it should have, making the room feel even colder. I took a step closer. Amina, what's wrong? Nothing, she replied quickly, almost too quickly. Her eyes flickered toward the side of the room, then back to the floor. She wouldn't look at me properly. She kept shifting her weight, as if she wanted to leave. I followed her gaze and noticed something else. A door at the end of the hallway. Closed. I didn't remember it being closed like that before. Is everything okay here? I asked gently. Yes, she said again, her voice flat. But everything about her said otherwise. I looked around once more, trying to understand what felt so wrong. It wasn't just the missing things. It was the feeling. The emptiness. The way she stood in front of me like a stranger. This wasn't the reunion I had dreamed of. Not even close. I turned back to her, searching her face for something familiar, something real. But all I found was distance. And in that moment, a quiet thought settled deep inside me, heavier than anything I had felt since returning. What was she hiding? That night, sleep did not come easily. I lay on the thin mattress, staring at the ceiling, listening to every small sound the house made. The silence from earlier had not disappeared, it had only changed shape. Now it felt alive, shifting in the dark, settling into corners I could not see. Amina had said very little after I arrived. She moved around the house quietly, avoiding long conversations, avoiding my eyes. Even during the simple meal she prepared, she barely spoke. When I tried to remind her of old memories, things that used to make her laugh, she only nodded faintly, as if those moments belonged to someone else. At first, I told myself she needed time. Years had passed. People change. But the feeling in my chest refused to settle. Sometime deep into the night, I heard movement. Soft footsteps. I stayed still, my eyes half closed, listening carefully. The footsteps passed by my room and moved toward the back of the house. There was a faint creak, like a door opening slowly, then closing again. I sat up quietly. For a moment, I considered calling out to her, but something stopped me. Instead, I waited. Minutes passed. Then more footsteps. Slower this time. Returning. I lay back down quickly, pretending to sleep. The next morning, I watched her more closely. Amina moved through the house with a strange rhythm, like she was following a pattern only she understood. She stayed mostly in the front room and the kitchen, rarely stepping toward the hallway that led to the back. When she did, it was quick, almost nervous, as if she didn't want to be there for long. At one point, I casually walked toward that same hallway, pretending to stretch my legs. Before I could take more than a few steps, her voice stopped me. Kofi. I turned. She was standing behind me, her expression tense. You don't need to go there, she said. Her tone wasn't loud, but it was firm in a way I had never heard before. Why not? I asked lightly, trying to keep my voice calm. It's nothing, she replied quickly. Just storage. It's messy. I nodded slowly, but her answer didn't feel right. She was watching me too closely, waiting for me to turn away. So I did. Later, I stepped outside, hoping the fresh air would clear my thoughts. But the village felt no different in daylight. The same strange distance lingered. People greeted me politely, but their conversations remained shallow, careful. I spoke again with Baba Nuru, hoping for something more this time. She seems different, I said quietly. He looked at me for a long moment, then sighed. Time changes people, Kofi. That's not all, I pressed. He shook his head slowly. Some things are better left alone. Left alone. Those words stayed with me as I walked back home. By the time I reached the house, something inside me had shifted. The confusion was still there, but now it had direction. This was not random. It was not just time or distance. Amina was hiding something. And everyone else knew it. That evening, as I watched her move silently through the house once again, I made a quiet decision. I would stop asking. And start watching instead. That night, I waited. I kept my breathing slow and steady, my eyes closed just enough to pretend I was asleep. The house had gone quiet again, but I knew better now. The silence was not empty. It was waiting, just like I was. Hours passed before I heard it. Footsteps. Soft, careful, almost practiced. Amina moved past my door once again, heading toward the back of the house. This time, I didn't hesitate. I counted a few seconds, then slowly sat up, making sure the floor beneath me didn't creak. I stepped out into the hallway, my heart beating louder than the silence around me. The back of the house felt different at night. Darker. Heavier. A faint smell lingered in the air, something I couldn't recognize, but it didn't belong. I moved slowly, placing each step carefully, following the direction she had gone. Then I saw it. The door. Closed, just like before. But now, there was something else. A thin line of light slipped through the bottom, flickering slightly, like a candle burning inside. I moved closer, my breath tightening. I could hear something. Not voices exactly, but a soft sound, like movement, like something shifting across the floor. I reached for the handle. Locked. I froze. The sound inside stopped instantly. A long, heavy silence followed, pressing against the other side of the door. I stepped back slowly, my chest tightening. Something was inside that room. Something Amina didn't want me to see. I returned to my room quickly, lying back down just as I heard her footsteps again. This time, they were slower. Careful. Listening. The next morning, I acted as if nothing had happened. But I was watching everything. When Amina stepped outside to fetch water, I moved. Quickly. I went straight to the back hallway. The door was still there, still closed. I tried the handle again. Locked. I looked around, searching for anything unusual. That's when I noticed the floor. Faint marks. Scratches, thin and uneven, leading toward the door. As if something heavy had been dragged across the ground. They were not fresh, but they hadn't been there before I left the village years ago. I was sure of it. I followed the marks with my eyes, my pulse rising. Near the wall, half hidden behind a small stool, something caught my attention. A piece of cloth. I picked it up slowly. It was old, slightly torn, but I recognized the pattern immediately. Amina had sewn it herself years ago. It used to belong to a dress she loved, one she wore during festivals. But this piece, it wasn't just torn. It was stained. Dark. I stared at it, my mind struggling to understand. Why would this be here? Why hide it? A sudden sound behind me made my body tense. Amina's footsteps. I quickly dropped the cloth back where I found it and stepped away from the door, forcing myself to look calm as she entered the house. Her eyes moved instantly toward the hallway. Then to me. For a brief moment, something flashed across her face. Fear. Real fear. She said nothing. Neither did I. But as I walked back to the front room, one thought refused to leave my mind. That room, and whatever was inside it, did not belong in this house. I tried to hold on to the version of Amina I knew, the one that lived clearly in my memories, untouched by whatever had happened while I was gone. But the more I watched her now, the harder it became to connect the two. That afternoon, as she sat quietly by the window, her hands resting still in her lap, I found myself drifting back to the past without even trying. Amina had never been still. She used to fill every corner of this house with movement, with laughter that echoed even after she left the room. I could see her as she was before, running barefoot across the yard, calling my name, insisting I join her in games I was always too tired to play. She would talk endlessly, about small things, about dreams, about stories she made up just to make me smile. Even when times were hard, she had a way of making everything feel lighter. But the girl sitting across from me now felt like a shadow of that memory. Her movements were slow, careful, as if she was always thinking about something else, something far away. She barely spoke unless I asked her a direct question, and even then, her answers were short, distant. Her eyes never stayed on mine for long. They kept drifting, often toward the same direction, the hallway that led to the back of the house. I followed her gaze once again. The door was still closed. She wasn't like this before, I murmured to myself, almost without realizing it. Amina looked up slightly, as if she had heard me, but she said nothing. A quiet tension settled between us, one that words couldn't seem to break. I wanted to ask her everything. I wanted to demand the truth, to shake her out of whatever this was. But every time I thought about it, something stopped me. What if I was wrong? What if this was just the weight of time, of loneliness, of living without me for so many years? What if I was the one seeing things that weren't there? But then my mind returned to the locked door. The scratches on the floor. The stained piece of cloth. Those were real. And so was the fear I had seen in her eyes. As the sun began to set, the house grew quieter, shadows stretching across the walls. I watched as Amina stood up slowly and walked toward the kitchen. Her steps were soft, almost silent, but there was a pattern to them now, something deliberate. It wasn't just distance. It wasn't just change. There was something else guiding her actions, something hidden beneath the surface. I leaned back slightly, my thoughts growing heavier with each passing moment. The memories of who she used to be and the reality of who she was now refused to fit together. They felt like two different people. And that thought unsettled me more than anything else. Because if the Amina I knew was truly gone, then who exactly was living in this house with me? I exhaled slowly, trying to steady my mind, but the question lingered, growing darker with every second. Maybe this wasn't just about her behavior. Maybe I didn't understand what was happening here at all. And for the first time since returning home, a quiet, unsettling thought crossed my mind. What if I was not seeing the truth clearly anymore? That evening, I couldn't stay inside the house any longer. The walls felt too close, the silence too heavy. I stepped outside, hoping the open air would quiet the thoughts circling in my mind. The village was settling into night. A few lanterns flickered in the distance, and the low murmur of voices drifted through the darkness. For a moment, it almost felt normal again. Almost. I walked without thinking, letting my feet carry me down familiar paths. But even those paths felt different now, like they no longer fully belonged to me. Kofi. The voice came from behind. I turned and saw Mama Zola standing near the edge of the road. She was older than I remembered, her face lined with years, but her eyes were sharp, watching me in a way that made me uneasy. Mama Zola, I said, forcing a polite smile. It's been a long time. She didn't return the smile. Instead, she stepped closer, lowering her voice. You should not have come back like this. Her words caught me off guard. What do you mean? She glanced around quickly, as if making sure no one else was listening. Things have changed here. I can see that, I replied. But no one will tell me why. She studied my face for a moment, then sighed softly. Some things are not easy to speak about. My patience was thinning. Does this have something to do with Amina? The moment I said her name, Mama Zola's expression tightened. You should be careful, she whispered. Careful of what? I asked, my voice sharper now. She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she looked past me, toward the direction of my house. Her silence stretched just long enough to make my chest tighten. When you left, she finally said, your sister was not alone. I frowned. What does that mean? Again, she hesitated, as if weighing her words. There were things happening. Strange things. People talked, but no one understood. My pulse quickened. What kind of things? She shook her head slowly. It is not my place to say. That's not enough, I insisted. If something happened, I deserve to know. Her eyes met mine then, and there was something in them I hadn't seen before. Fear. Some truths, she said quietly, do not bring peace, Kofi. They only bring more darkness. A chill ran through me. I don't care, I said firmly. I need to know what's going on. Mama Zola stepped back slightly, her expression hardening. Then you must find it yourself. That's exactly what I'm trying to do, I replied. But no one will speak clearly. She gave a faint, almost sad shake of her head. Because speaking clearly will not protect you. Those words lingered in the air between us. I stood there, searching her face for more, but she said nothing else. After a moment, she turned and began walking away, her figure slowly disappearing into the darkness. Mama Zola. I called after her. She stopped, but did not turn around. Whatever you think you know, she said softly, remember this, not everything inside that house is what you believe it is. Then she walked away. I stood there, the night suddenly feeling colder than before. Her words echoed in my mind, mixing with everything I had already seen. The locked door. The fear in Amina's eyes. The silence of the village. Something had happened while I was gone. Something no one wanted to speak about. As I made my way back home, my steps felt heavier, but my thoughts were clearer than they had been since I arrived. I was done waiting. Done guessing. Whatever truth was hidden inside that house, I was going to uncover it. That night, the house did not feel like a house anymore. It felt like something that was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. I was lying awake when I first heard it. A faint sound from the back of the house. Not footsteps this time, something slower. A dragging noise, followed by a soft thud, like something had been placed down carefully. My eyes opened instantly. I turned my head slightly, listening. Silence. Then again. A soft scrape, then nothing. My heart began to beat faster, but I didn't move. I knew Amina was awake too. I could feel it. The house carried that strange tension, like both of us were aware of something the other refused to speak about. Then I heard her voice. Kofi. It was barely above a whisper. I sat up slowly. Yes? No reply. I waited. Seconds stretched into something heavier. Then I heard movement outside my room. Slow steps. Not leaving, but circling. Like she was unsure whether to approach or escape. I stood up quietly and opened the door just a little. The hallway was dark. And empty. Amina? I called softly. Nothing. But the feeling didn't leave. It was stronger now, pressing against my skin like the air itself had changed. I walked a few steps forward, careful not to make noise. The wooden floor creaked under my weight, and for a moment, I stopped, listening for any reaction. From her. From anything. Then I saw her. Amina was standing near the end of the hallway, facing the wall. Completely still. My breath slowed. Amina. She didn't turn immediately. It took her a few seconds, as if she was forcing herself to respond to her own name. When she finally turned, her face was pale. Too pale. What are you doing awake? I asked gently. She blinked slowly. Nothing. But her voice didn't sound like nothing. It sounded empty. I looked past her toward the back door area. The same direction she always avoided. The air there felt heavier than the rest of the house, almost colder. What's back there? I asked quietly. Her expression changed instantly. Nothing, she said again, but this time sharper. Too sharp. I took a step closer. Amina, I heard something. Something is moving in this house at night. Her eyes widened slightly, just for a second. Then she looked away. It's the wind, she said quickly. But there was no wind. Not inside. A long silence followed. Then, from somewhere deep in the house, came a sound again. A soft knock. Once. Then again. This time, Amina reacted. Not with words. With fear. Real fear. Her hands tightened slightly, and she stepped back without thinking. Her eyes went straight toward the back of the house again, like something there had just called her. And in that moment, I understood something very clearly. Whatever was in this house. It was not just being hidden. It was being controlled. Amina suddenly turned away from me. Go back to your room, she said quickly. No, I replied. She froze. For the first time since I returned, she looked directly at me with urgency. You don't understand, she whispered. But before I could respond, another sound came from the back. Louder this time. A clear, deliberate knock. And this time, it wasn't just the house that reacted. It was her. And I knew then, whatever I was about to do next, I might not be able to undo it. I didn't wait for another second. The moment Amina turned her back and moved toward the darkness of the house, I followed her silently. My heart was pounding so hard I was afraid it would give me away, but something stronger than fear was pushing me forward now. I had already crossed the line between confusion and certainty. This was not just strange anymore. This was deliberate. Amina stopped near the back hallway again. The same place she always avoided. The same place she warned me not to enter. She stood there for a moment, as if listening to something beyond the wall, then slowly reached toward the side. My breath tightened. She wasn't just standing there. She was unlocking something. A soft click broke the silence. My eyes widened. There was another layer to this place. A hidden panel in the wall I had never noticed before, blending too perfectly with the wood. She pulled it open just slightly, enough for a narrow passage to appear. A hidden space. My body went cold. Amina glanced around quickly, then stepped inside without hesitation. I waited a few seconds, then moved. Slowly. Carefully. The opening was barely visible now, but I slipped in behind her before it closed completely. Inside, the air changed instantly. It was colder. Darker. And it smelled like something I couldn't place. Old earth mixed with something sharp and unfamiliar. I followed the faint sound of her movement ahead of me. The space was narrow, like a corridor carved behind the house itself. My hand brushed the wall as I walked, feeling rough, uneven wood. Then I saw light ahead. A weak, flickering glow. I stopped just before the corner. Amina was there. But she wasn't alone in her movements anymore. She was standing in front of something I couldn't fully see from where I was. I leaned slightly forward. And what I saw made my stomach drop. There were objects arranged on the ground. Not random things, carefully placed items. Old fabric pieces, small containers, something that looked like dried herbs, and markings drawn into the dirt floor. And in the center, a name. My breath stopped when I realized what it was. My own name. Kofi. Written in a way that didn't feel like handwriting, but something else. Amina knelt slowly beside it, her hands shaking slightly. Her lips moved, but I couldn't hear what she was saying. It wasn't normal speech. It sounded like a chant, or a prayer. My mind refused to process what I was seeing. This wasn't just secrecy. This was something else entirely. I stepped back instinctively, my foot hitting a loose wooden plank. It creaked. Amina stopped instantly. The silence that followed was unbearable. Slowly, she turned her head and looked directly in my direction. Her eyes were no longer just afraid. They were aware. And in that moment, I realized she had known I was following her all along. The flickering light between us seemed to grow colder. And then, without warning, something shifted behind her, something I had not noticed before. Something that made her whisper my name back. But not in the way I remembered. I stood frozen in that hidden corridor, my mind refusing to accept what my eyes had just seen. The moment Amina turned toward me, I didn't run immediately. I couldn't. It was as if my body had forgotten how to move. Her eyes stayed locked on mine for a long second. Then she spoke. Kofi. But her voice didn't sound like her anymore. It was softer, distant, almost layered with something I couldn't explain. Not anger. Not fear. Something older. I stepped back slowly, my hand brushing against the rough wooden wall behind me. My thoughts were breaking apart into pieces that refused to connect. Amina slowly turned away from me, as if my presence no longer mattered, and looked back at the ground where my name was written. The symbols around it were clearer now. Not just random markings. They were arranged in a pattern. Circular, deliberate. Like something repeated many times before. My chest tightened. This wasn't just hiding something. This was preparation. I looked again at the objects on the floor. The dried herbs, the cloth pieces, the small containers placed at exact distances. Everything had meaning, even if I didn't understand it. Amina reached forward and lightly touched one of the markings. The moment her fingers made contact, a strange sound filled the space. Not loud, but deep. Like a low vibration in the air itself. I flinched. She didn't. Instead, she whispered something again, under her breath. This time I caught only fragments. He returned. My mind snapped. He? I thought instantly. Who was she talking about? I took another step back, but the corridor suddenly felt smaller. Heavier. The air no longer felt normal. It felt charged, like something had been disturbed just by my presence. Amina finally stood up again. When she turned back to me, her expression had changed once more. It wasn't just blank anymore. It was conflicted. As if she was fighting something inside herself. Kofi, she said again, more clearly this time. You shouldn't have come here. I shook my head, trying to hold on to reason. Amina, what is this? What are you doing? For a second, she hesitated. Her eyes flickered toward the markings again, then back to me. I am trying to keep it contained, she said quietly. Contained? I repeated. What does that even mean? She didn't answer. Instead, she stepped closer to the wall behind her and placed her palm against it. The hidden space seemed to react almost like it was alive, responding to her touch. I noticed something else then. The markings on the ground were not just centered around my name. They were repeated. Different layers. Different times. As if this wasn't the first. As if something had been done before, and failed. A sharp doubt hit me. What if I was not the first person to return to this house and discover this? What if I was just the next part of something already in motion? Amina looked at me one last time. And in that moment, I saw it clearly. She wasn't just hiding something from me. She was afraid of what would happen if I stopped believing in her. And I didn't even know anymore whether I should. I stepped out of the hidden corridor slowly, but my mind never really left it. Every step back into the main house felt heavier, like I was carrying something invisible that pressed against my chest. The normal rooms, the familiar walls, none of it felt normal anymore. Everything had changed the moment I saw my name written on the ground inside that hidden space. Amina followed me out without saying a word. She didn't try to stop me. She didn't deny what I had seen. That silence was worse than any explanation. Now she stood across the room, keeping distance between us like it was something carefully measured. Her face looked exhausted, but not in a physical way. It was deeper than that. Like she had been holding something inside herself for too long. I wanted to speak. I wanted to demand answers. But the words didn't come immediately. Because something inside me was breaking in two different directions. One part of me still saw Amina as the sister I grew up with. The one who waited for me when I left. The one who wrote letters I still kept hidden in my bag. The one who would cry when I got hurt and laugh when I tried to act strong. That Amina felt real. But the other version, the one standing in front of me now, didn't fit into any memory I trusted anymore. My voice finally came out, quiet but tense. Amina, tell me the truth. She didn't respond right away. Instead, she looked down at her hands, as if the answer was somewhere there. I am trying to protect you, she said softly. That sentence hit me harder than I expected. Protect me from what? From her? From whatever I saw inside that hidden space? From the truth itself? My emotions twisted inside me. I could feel anger rising, but it was tangled with something else. Something heavier. Pain. Because no matter what I had seen, I still didn't want to believe she was the cause of it. I took a step closer. If you are protecting me, I said, struggling to stay calm, then why does it feel like you are hiding me from the truth? Her eyes finally met mine. And for the first time since I returned, I saw something raw in them. Fear, but not just for herself. For me. You don't understand what you are stepping into, she whispered. Then make me understand, I replied. A long silence followed. In that silence, my mind kept circling one question again and again, refusing to leave me alone. Is she a victim of something I don't understand, or is she the one controlling it? The thought made my stomach tighten. Because both answers led somewhere I didn't want to go. Amina turned slightly away from me, as if she couldn't hold my gaze anymore. If you push this, she said quietly, you won't be able to go back to how things were. I let out a slow breath. I already can't go back, I said. That was the truth. The house, the village, even her, nothing felt like it did when I first arrived. Everything had shifted. And now there was only one direction left. Forward. I looked at Amina, really looked at her this time, trying to find the sister I remembered inside the stranger she had become. But I couldn't. And that realization made my decision for me. Whatever she was hiding, whatever that hidden space meant. I could no longer stay silent. I had to confront her, no matter what truth came out of it. The house felt different after that conversation. Not physically different, but emotionally shifted, like something inside it had finally cracked open and could not close again. Every sound seemed sharper. Every silence felt intentional. Even the air between Amina and me carried weight now, as if it was holding back something that was about to break. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I stayed awake, sitting near the dim light in the corner of the room, replaying everything in my mind. The hidden corridor. The markings. My name written on the ground. Amina's voice, both familiar and unfamiliar at the same time. By morning, I had stopped trying to convince myself this was just confusion. It wasn't. Something real was happening here. And Amina was at the center of it. When she finally came into the room, she didn't act surprised to see me awake. If anything, she looked like she had already expected this moment. We didn't greet each other. There was no warmth left in simple words now. I stood up slowly. "Amina," I said, my voice steady but firm. "We need to talk. Properly." She didn't respond immediately. Her eyes moved past me for a second, toward the back of the house, then returned. "I told you," she said quietly. "Some things are not meant to be opened again." "I already opened them," I replied. "You don't get to decide that anymore." That made her pause. For the first time, I saw hesitation in her expression that wasn't fear alone. It was conflict. Like something inside her was being pulled in two directions. I stepped closer. "I saw what's back there," I said. "My name. The symbols. The room you've been hiding." Her breathing changed slightly. Not fast. Controlled. But different. "I didn't want you to see that," she admitted finally. "Then why is it there?" I asked. Silence. That's silence again. But this time, I didn't step back from it. I stayed right inside it, forcing her to face me. Amina slowly sat down, like the weight of the conversation was too heavy to stand under. Her hands rested in her lap, but they were tense. "You came back at the wrong time," she said softly. "There is no right time for lies," I replied. Her eyes lifted to mine again. And for a moment, something broke through her expression. Not the controlled calm she had been showing. Something deeper. Something almost desperate. "You don't understand what happens when it notices you," she whispered. That sentence landed in my chest like a stone. "It?" I repeated. She didn't answer. But the way she looked at the back of the house again told me everything she refused to say. I felt the tension rising between us, stretching tighter with every second. Whatever explanation she was avoiding was now directly between us, waiting to be forced into the open. I took another step forward. This time, there was no hesitation in my voice. "Amina," I said firmly, "you are going to tell me everything." She closed her eyes for a brief moment. And when she opened them again, I knew the conversation had crossed a point of no return. Because whatever she was about to say was not just a secret anymore. It was the truth I had been standing too close to all along. And now, I was finally ready to hear it. Amina stayed silent for a long time after I demanded the truth. The room felt smaller with every passing second, as if the walls themselves were leaning in to listen. I could hear my own breathing louder than anything else. Finally, she spoke. But not immediately to me. She looked toward the back of the house first. "I didn't choose this," she said quietly. Those words were not an answer. They were the beginning of something heavier. I didn't interrupt her this time. I could feel that whatever she was about to say had been held back for a very long time. Amina slowly stood up and walked toward the center of the room, like she needed distance just to speak. When you left, she continued, her voice shaking slightly, things here did not stay normal. My chest tightened. What things? I asked. She hesitated again, then looked at me directly. At first, it was small, she said. Strange sounds at night. Objects moved without reason. People in the village, they started avoiding this house. My mind flashed back to Baba Nuru, Mama Zola, all their warnings that never fully explained anything. Amina took a slow breath. Then I started hearing it too, she said. Hearing what? She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she closed her eyes for a moment, like she was forcing herself to remember something she hated. When it started calling your name, she said finally, I knew something had already attached itself to you. A cold silence fell between us. My name. Again. Always my name. I stepped forward slightly. Amina, what are you talking about? Her eyes opened, and for the first time, I saw something raw in them. Fear mixed with guilt. There are things buried in this land, she said slowly. Things people here learned not to disturb. My mind struggled to follow. Buried? I repeated. She nodded faintly. I tried to stop it from reaching you, she said quickly, as if defending herself before I even accused her. That's why I made the markings. That's why the room exists. I was trying to contain it. My thoughts spun. Contain it. The symbols. The hidden space. None of it made sense, and yet all of it was connected. But still, something didn't fit. If you were protecting me, I said carefully, why did it respond to my presence? Amina's expression changed. That question hit something deeper. She looked away. I don't know everything, she admitted. And that was the first crack in the explanation. Not full truth. Not resolution. Just a partial confession surrounded by more mystery. She turned slightly toward the back hallway again, lowering her voice. It has been waiting, she whispered. And now that you are back. She stopped. As if she had said too much already. I stepped closer, my voice firm now. Now that I am back, what? Amina didn't answer. Instead, she looked at me with an expression I couldn't fully read anymore. Not just fear. Not just protection. Something like resignation. Like she knew the part she had been delaying had finally arrived. And in that silence, I realized something important. Whatever truth she had just revealed, it was only the surface. The real truth was still waiting behind it. And I was about to find it. Amina didn't speak for a while after that. It felt like she was searching for the right place to begin, as if the truth itself had too many pieces scattered across time. I stood there, waiting, my patience replaced now by something heavier, an urgency that wouldn't let me step back anymore. Finally, she walked slowly toward the old wooden chair in the corner and sat down. When you left for abroad, she said quietly, this village was already carrying something people didn't talk about. I frowned. Something like what? She didn't answer directly. Instead, she began from the beginning. At first, it was just stories, she said. Old warnings from elders. They said there are places in this land where certain things were buried, not to be disturbed. People ignored them, until the night the well near our house went dry without reason. I remembered that well. It had always been there, quiet and ordinary. Amina continued. After that night, things changed. Animals stopped coming near certain parts of the land. People said they heard voices near the fields, even when no one was there. My mind tried to dismiss it as superstition, but her voice didn't sound like she was telling a story. It sounded like she was reliving something she had never escaped. And then? I asked. Amina hesitated. Then you left, she said softly. I felt a small tension rise in my chest. What does that have to do with me? Her eyes finally lifted to mine. Everything started changing more after you left, she said. It was as if something noticed your absence and filled the space you left behind. I didn't respond immediately. The idea felt unreal, but the seriousness in her voice made it hard to dismiss. Amina continued, her tone becoming lower. One night, I woke up and saw markings outside the house. The same kind you saw in the hidden room. But back then, I didn't understand what they meant. She paused. I tried to ignore them, she admitted. But then they started appearing inside the house. My stomach tightened. Inside. Not outside. Amina looked down at her hands. That's when I began doing what I thought was right, she said. I learned the patterns. I tried to stop it from spreading. I thought if I controlled it, I could protect everything, including you. I stepped forward slowly. So the hidden room, I said, the symbols, all of that was your doing? She nodded faintly. But not everything, she added quickly. Not everything came from me. That sentence changed the air in the room. I felt it immediately. Because it meant there was something else involved. Something she didn't create. Something she couldn't fully control. Amina looked up again, her voice barely above a whisper now. And then you came back. A long silence followed. Not empty this time. Heavy. Meaningful. As if the house itself was listening more closely now. I could feel the final part of the truth approaching, still not fully spoken, but no longer avoidable. Because everything she had said so far was not an ending. It was only the beginning of what she had been trying to keep buried all along. Amina finally looked up at me, and this time there was no hesitation left in her eyes. Whatever she had been holding back had reached its limit. You deserve to know everything, she said quietly. The room felt still. Even the house seemed to quiet down, as if it was waiting too. She took a slow breath. It didn't start with you leaving, she said. It started long before that. Long before we even understood what it was. My hands tightened slightly, but I didn't interrupt. There is something beneath this land, Amina continued. Something people here once tried to forget. Not just a story, something real enough that our ancestors built rules around it. Boundaries. I felt a cold weight settle in my chest. When those boundaries were broken, she said, it didn't disappear. It stayed. Sleeping. Waiting. She paused, her voice becoming softer. And it reacts to connection. I frowned slightly. Connection? Amina nodded slowly. Family ties. Emotional bonds. Blood. A silence followed that felt heavier than anything before. She continued, her voice now shaking slightly. When you left, it didn't matter at first. But when you stayed away for so long, something in the balance changed. It began to shift toward me. Toward the house. My mind tried to process it, but it felt unreal. I didn't understand it fully at first, she admitted. I only knew that strange things began happening more often. Objects moving. Sounds at night. Dreams that didn't feel like dreams. Her hands clenched slightly in her lap. Then it started responding, she said. When I spoke. When I thought. When I tried to protect you from far away. I felt my voice drop. Protect me from what exactly? Amina looked at me directly now. From being chosen. That word hung in the air. Chosen. I didn't speak. She continued, more quickly now, like the truth was finally breaking free. It doesn't take randomly, she said. It follows attachment. And when you returned, it recognized you immediately. A chill ran through me. Amina's eyes softened, but there was pain in them now. That's why I built the hidden space, she said. That's why I placed the markings. I wasn't controlling it. I was trying to delay it. To confuse it. To keep it focused on me instead of you. My throat felt tight. So all of this, I said slowly, the secrecy, the fear, the door, it was to protect me? Amina nodded. Yes, she whispered. But it was also reacting through me. I was becoming part of it without realizing. That's why I changed. That's why I couldn't be the same anymore. A long silence followed. For the first time, everything I had seen started forming into a single shape. Not clear yet, but connected. But there was still one thing missing. If that's true, I said quietly, then what happens now? Amina's expression changed. Not fear this time. Acceptance. Now, she said softly, it knows you are fully aware. And in that moment, the house felt different again. Not silent. Not waiting. But listening. After Amina finished speaking, neither of us moved for a long time. The words she had said didn't feel like something that ended. They felt like something that had only just begun. The house, once familiar, now felt like a witness to everything that had been hidden inside it. Every corner carried weight. Every silence felt meaningful in a way I could no longer ignore. I slowly sat down, my mind struggling to settle on a single thought. Everything I had believed about my return home had changed. What I thought was a reunion was something far more complicated, something I was still trying to understand. Amina remained where she was, watching me carefully, as if she was waiting for my reaction. But there was nothing simple to give her. Anger, confusion, fear, they were all there, but none of them felt complete on their own. So this has been happening, all this time, I said quietly, more to myself than to her. She nodded faintly. And you carried it alone? I asked. Amina didn't answer immediately. Her silence told me more than words could. I tried to handle it, she said finally. Because I thought if you came back and saw everything, it would be worse. I let out a slow breath. The weight of that statement pressed heavily on my chest. For a moment, I thought about the years I spent away. The life I built. The distance I thought was just physical, not knowing something like this had been growing in the space I left behind. It made everything feel different. Not just the house. Not just the village. But the idea of home itself. I looked at Amina again. She didn't look like the same person I remembered from my childhood, but she also didn't feel like a stranger anymore. She felt like someone who had been holding something far too heavy for far too long, alone. And I didn't know how to feel about that. Part of me wanted to ask more questions. Part of me wanted to step back, to leave, to escape whatever this was before it went further. But another part of me, the part that still saw her as my sister, couldn't walk away. What happens now? I asked again, softer this time. Amina looked down for a moment before answering. I don't know, she said honestly. Now that you know, things will not stay the same. That was the only certainty left. Nothing would stay the same. The silence that followed wasn't empty anymore. It was full of consequences, full of everything we had uncovered and everything we still didn't understand. Outside, the house creaked softly with the wind, but even that sound felt distant now. I realized then that the truth had not ended anything. It had only changed the shape of what was still coming. And for the first time since returning, I understood clearly that whatever came next would not just affect her or me. It would affect everything tied to this place. And we were already standing inside it. The night after Amina's truth, sleep didn't feel like sleep anymore. It felt like floating between thoughts that refused to settle. I stayed awake, listening to the house breathe around me, noticing how even the silence now had layers. Amina sat outside on the small step near the door for a long time. Neither of us spoke again after that conversation. Not because everything was resolved, but because words no longer felt strong enough to hold what we had uncovered. I eventually stepped outside too. The village was quiet, but not peaceful. It was the kind of quiet that felt aware, like even the land was listening differently now. The wind moved slowly through the trees, carrying sounds I couldn't fully recognize. I stood beside Amina without looking at her at first. For a long time, neither of us said anything. Then she spoke softly. I don't think it ever truly leaves, she said. I understood what she meant without asking. I looked out at the dark outlines of the village, the same place I had returned to with hope in my chest, only to find something far deeper buried underneath its surface. Maybe it never did, I replied. Amina nodded faintly, her eyes fixed on the distance. There was no resolution in that moment. No clean ending. No clear victory over fear or truth. Only understanding that some things don't disappear just because they are discovered. They remain. Sometimes they change shape. Sometimes they wait. The thought stayed with me longer than anything else: how much of what we call home is actually known to us, and how much is simply accepted without question until the day we return and see it differently. I turned slightly toward Amina. She looked exhausted, not just from the truth she had shared, but from everything she had been carrying alone for so long. You should have told me sooner, I said quietly, not as blame, but as understanding mixed with pain. She gave a small, tired smile. And if I had, she said, would you have believed me? I didn't answer. Because I didn't know. That was the most unsettling part. Not the hidden room. Not the markings. Not even the unknown force she described. But the realization that truth often arrives too late to change what it has already touched. The wind moved again through the trees, and for a moment, I felt something strange, not fear this time, but awareness. That some stories don't end when they are told. They continue living in the places they come from. I looked back at the house one last time. It stood quietly behind us, the same as before, yet completely changed in meaning. And I understood then that returning home is never just about going back. Sometimes, it is about discovering that home has been waiting for you to finally see it clearly. Even if what you see is not something you can ever forget. If this story made you question what's real and what's hidden beneath silence, then you're not alone. Because sometimes the scariest truths are not the ones we hear, but the ones we slowly realize too late. If you enjoyed this African folktale mystery, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss the next story. And tell me in the comments. Was Amina protecting Kofi, or was she part of what he was never meant to survive? Until next time, stay curious and stay aware.